Om Stapakaya ca dharmasya Sarvadharmasvarupine Avatar-varishtaya Ramakrishna te namah. Asato ma sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityorma mritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from darkness and ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. When this prayer is fulfilled, then we will have the experience about the absolute truth. Which is the subject of today, that thou art. The whole truth is in us, in every one of us. Because we have not been able to realize this truth, we are always in some kind of suffering, unhappiness, bondage. Only we will have to live a life conducive to experience this ideal. In Vedanta, we use the word sin, not in the way how people generally use that word. What is sin according to Vedanta? Ignorance is sin. As long as you are ignorant, you are committing a grave sin. So herein comes the perennial philosophy of Vedas to show light, to remove this ignorance, which is the cause of all troubles. Go to the root. Then you will know the beauty of it. The Vedas have given this wonderful philosophy of Vedanta. It has been indoctrinated by the rishis through their deep meditation in a serene atmosphere of hermitage in the forest. They have gone maximum with regards to the achievement. What is this material achievement you are all talking about? Today he discovered something, tomorrow he is discovering something else. This is all trash. The real discovery is to know what you are. The real discovery is how to get rid of your ignorance, which binds you to this world. And this philosophy has been given to us by the sages in the form of aphorisms. We call in Sanskrit sutras. Small statement. It contains sublime truth. These truths are called Mahavakyas. Vakya means statement, Maha means great. Great statements. You may call them great commandments. That is why Vedas are the source of perennial inspiration. No one need despair of life. Come on. You are despairing in the life. You are undergoing all sorts of tribulations on account of your ignorance. Come, study, practice. Then you will derive the supreme benefit. Now the four aphorisms are very important. The four Vedas, each Veda has got one predominant, prominent Mahavakya. It always points you towards the ideal. It always shows the way. Look, this is your ideal. Don't be foolish in going astray. So it always warns you, leads you, gives you supreme joy in the final result. These four Vakyas, one is Prajnanam Brahma, one sutra. Consciousness is Brahman. Brahman is what we call God. Consciousness is Brahman. That is one Mahavakya, great statement. Another statement, Tattvamasi, the topic on which I am talking today, that thou art. The third one, I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. Here this self doesn't mean your mind. I don't refer to mind. Self means your innermost consciousness. And another Mahavakya, the fourth one, Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. It's all fantastic. To call yourself as God. But that is the truth. Because you don't know you are God, you are suffering. You cannot get rid of suffering even if you go to heaven, I tell you. As long as you are in ignorance, you are bound to suffer. Now, just I am giving you the brief introduction, as it were, to the subject. The four Mahavakyas I told, consciousness is Brahman, that thou art, this self is Brahman, I am Brahman. These are the four great commandments. The first one, Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. It appears in Aitareya Upanishad in Rigveda. Vedas have got Upanishads, All the Vedas have Upanishads. Upanishads deal with the knowledge of self. The philosophy of Vedanta is clearly given out in the Upanishads. So this Prajnanam Brahma makes a general declaration that consciousness is Brahman. Consciousness in an individual is the same consciousness underlying the entire universe. So, what does it mean? Consciousness is the common substratum for both microcosm and macrocosm. That all-pervading consciousness is a reality. Consciousness in an individual is, to explain it, giving an example, like space in a pot. While the all-pervading consciousness is like total space. Even when you call space differently, you can't really segregate space in the pot from the total space. The material of the pot cannot divide space into parts. Space cannot be divided. For the sake of convenience or particular reference, you may give space different names: pot space, room space, this hall space, open space, etc. But space as such is indivisible. That means space is homogeneous entity. Pot space or whatever other space you call it, and the total all-pervading space are one and the same. One and the same. Similarly, you may give consciousness different names with respect to different embodiments, but consciousness remains ever one homogeneous, all-pervading reality. That is what the first aphorism pronounced. Prajnanam Brahma. I am giving you in a nutshell. If you want to study this elaborately, go to the Upanishad. The second aphorism, Tattvamasi, comes in Chandogya Upanishad in Samaved. You know there are 4 Vedas: Rigveda, Samaved, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda. Do you know the meaning of Veda? Veda means to know, to realize. That's the meaning. There's no dogmatism there. To know, if you are really aspiring to know the mystery, come to the Vedas. So Tattvamasi is again another universal declaration to all mankind. Tattvam asi, that thou art. What is that? It refers to the supreme reality, what we call Brahman. Thou means it refers to the core of your personality, the supreme self that is enveloped by the 5 layers of matter in you. 5 layers of matter. So this sutra explains to you that it is your own self that pervades everywhere as reality. Reality is not anything different from your essential being. To explain it through an analogy, the waters of the ocean evaporate on account of sun's heat and form clouds. When water vapor is saturated in the clouds, what happens? Rain falls. Rainwater collects in the valleys of the mountains and flows down into the plains as rivers. The same ocean water dropping down through rain, flowing through rivers. Rivers assume their distinct individualities. Nevertheless, they are all water, and water alone. Water in river and water in ocean, one and the same. Similarly, beings claim individualities of their own, but consciousness in every being is the same as the all-pervading consciousness. Your self is infinite reality. That reality thou art. This aphorism is in the form of an advice to a seeker of truth. It is called, therefore, Upadesha Vakya, statement of advice. The third aphorism, Ayam Atma Brahma. This comes in Mandukya Upanishad in Atharva Ved. Ayam means this, Atma means self. This self refers to Atman, which activates your body, mind, intellect. Brahman activates the entire universe. The activating principle in the individual and universe is the same. Atman is therefore Brahman. Atman is related to Brahman. And to give an example, like a spark to a blazing fire. Spark also is fire. Conflagration is fire. Both are element fire. In this sense, spark is conflagration. Likewise, the aphorism pronounces, this Atman is Brahman. It provides a formula for an aspirant to practice and discover the oneness of Atman and Brahman. Hence it is called Abhyasa Vakya, statement of practice. The last of the four aphorisms which I just stated, Aham Brahmasmi, comes in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in Yajurveda. The aphorism is the ultimate pronouncement of the man of self-realization. Aham means I, Asmi means am, Brahman is God. The self-realized man affirms, I am God. Because you are not having that experience, you are in darkness of ignorance. So light of knowledge means realization of Brahman. Realization that your Atman is verily that Brahman. Prior to realization of self, you use first person singular pronoun I to mean the waker, dreamer or deep sleeper. You believe yourself to be a particular person in the waking state of consciousness. As you leave the waking state and enter the dream state of consciousness, you believe yourself to be a totally different person. Again, when you move to the deep sleep, you assume a third personality as deep sleeper. The irony of it is that you use I in all three cases. That means I pervades the three states, assuming three altogether different personalities. In truth, I is your real self. In these three states, your self is conditioned by your gross, subtle and causal bodies. Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira. It is not in its purest form. When you transcend the limitations of your gross, subtle and causal bodies, you expose your pure self. The nascent I that becomes very clear. That pure, unconditioned, native I, that is God. Therefore, pure self is God. If there is any impurity, it's not to be called God. So this Upanishad says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am God, I am Brahman. I am the all-pervading reality. So the aphorism is the declaration of the seeker who gains the ultimate experience of self-realization. Hence, this particular statement is called Anubhav Vakya, statement of experience. The great scripture, Bhagavad Gita, the message of Lord Krishna, expounds the aphorism. If you study the 18 chapters of the Gita, it can be divided into 3 sets of 6 chapters each. The first 6 chapters deal with concept of Tvam, meaning thou. The middle 6 chapters deal with Tat, means that. The last 6 chapters of Gita refers to Asi, means art. That thou art. So the philosophy of Gita speaks of the aphorism that thou art. Such is the potency of these great commandments. So, these aphorisms pronounce that there is but one reality beyond the comprehension of your intellect. That reality you are. Realize that this world is mere passing phenomenon, a variety show having no pith or substance. You are now lost in this empty show, all because of ignorance of your own self. Why it happened, we don't know. We are in darkness. Why are we in darkness? Instead of probing that question, let us get out of darkness. How to get rid of darkness? That's the point. So do not grope in the darkness of ignorance anymore. Regain the knowledge of yourself. Instantly you merge with reality beyond the realm of time, space and causation. Now, how to understand this Mahavakya, I am God? How to understand that concept? Ordinarily we see that everyone uses the I to mean one's reincarnated personality. No one employs I to indicate one's eternal self or Atman. He doesn't mean that I. What we generally use I in an ordinary sense is our little I, which is associated with our ego. So entire mankind, he is hypnotized to believe that self is perceiver, feeler, thinker. In such a hypnotic state, it is extremely difficult to drive home the idea that you are God. Nevertheless, the truth persists that you are God. Realize this truth of Vedanta. We have to struggle, practice, undergo certain disciplines, practice some yoga to realize this truth. Affirm to yourself, I am God. The affirmation, I am God, is not the same as statements, I am an American, I am an engineer, I am tall, I am short. These statements are totally different in nature. The words America, engineer, tall, short, etc. qualify the subject I. They are something other than I. Two separate entities. America is one thing and I is another. So are the other words different from I. They are all qualities. They are all properties. They are attributes pertaining to I. But when a Vedantin declares I am God, how do you understand it? The word God doesn't qualify I. God is not a quality. It is not a property or attribute. This statement is not of the same sort as I am an American. The statement means I and God are one. It is a subtle concept. You will have to think carefully. Let us understand it through an analogy. Rope and snake. This example is frequently given in Vedanta. It's a wonderful analogy. In this analogy, a boy mistakes the rope for a snake. Mistaking the rope for a snake. He says, the snake is big, black, coiled. Probably he's seeing in the darkness from a distance. He is caught up in an illusion. You tell him, your snake is a rope. These two statements, the boy's and yours, differ fundamentally. The boy's statement is the same as the man saying, I am an American, I am an engineer, etc. The size, color, position are qualities, properties, attributes of the snake. But the word rope is not so. Rope is not an attribute of snake. Rope is not separate from snake. Rope is snake. Snake is rope, one and the same. Similarly, when a Vedantin says I am God, he means I am God are one. I and God are one. God is not an attribute. God is me. I am God. I am not the body, mind, intellect. I am the real being. I am reality. The hypnosis has overthrown the minds of people. They believe themselves to be anything other than reality. They consider themselves to be man or woman, big or small, strong or weak, brilliant or dull. No one even suspects oneself to be God. And yet the hard reality is that everyone is God. Everyone is that eternal being. You are God. Vedanta roars this truth. Points out your birthright. Bids you cry out boldly, I am God. Aham Brahmasmi. But the people of the world are shy, they are hesitant, they are fearful, they shudder at the thought of losing their individuality. So they don't want to entertain the thought of reality. They would rather cling to this world and suffer. How strange. Yet how true. You denounce your intrinsic sovereignty and court slavery. Vedanta appeals to your good sense time and again. Renounce this abject slavery. Do not feel shy. Hesitate. Not anymore. Take hold of truth. Don't have any hesitation. Take charge of the eternal kingdom within you. Be your sovereign self. You have then gained all that is to be gained in life. There is an incident in the Old Testament. Moses is said to have fallen into this state of slavery. He was walking on Mount Sinai. He saw a serpent. He trembled at the sight of it. Just then he heard a voice. The voice commanded him, "Hold that hissing serpent." It was the voice of God. But Moses was fearful. He hesitated in the beginning. He shuddered at the thought of it. Catching the hissing serpent. But the voice was insistent. "Get hold of it." Then Moses took a bold step and held the serpent. Instantly, the serpent turned into a staff. And that staff worked miracles. Moses touched a rock with the staff and fresh water gushed forth from it. When the Israelites were running for safety, the Red Sea stood in their way. Moses again used his staff. No sooner his staff touched the sea, the water split and dry land appeared before them. Thus, the Israelites passed into safety. It is written like that in the Old Testament. Similarly, reality seems terrifying. You would keep off from it. You would prefer to indulge in pleasures of your senses. You don't want to drop your ego and experience your Godhead. You are afraid to leave the comforts of the known and plunge into unknown. You are ignorant of the supreme bliss of Godhood. Your ignorance is the cause of your fright. Why you are afraid of? Because of ignorance. So Vedanta offers you knowledge, jnana, to overcome ignorance. Emboldens you to stifle your ego and reveal yourself. It seems difficult. The suggestion should work with you, though it sounds awful, but you must make it. You must plunge fearlessly. Get hold of the ego. Smother your selfishness. Assert your divinity. Embrace your Godhead within. You will become the monarch of all you survey. All your worries, all your anxieties, they all vanish instantly. You live in perfect peace and bliss. But some may think it is too much to believe themselves to be God. They may prefer to call themselves simple, inefficacious, limited creatures. It only shows that they are steeped in ignorance. They are blind to truth. It is wrong to believe yourself to be so. You are being false to yourself when you consider yourself a mortal with name, form, position, status, etc. You commit sin when you do not proclaim your immortality. When you deny your divinity. Therefore, gather up all your energy, courage, and conviction, and face reality. Pronounce your true nature. Aham Brahmasmi. I am God. A man was once involved in a serious car accident. He had purchased a brand new car. Unfortunately, he met with accident. It was smashed. He suffered a great loss. Came back home in the evening. The same day evening, he arranged a party in his apartment. Invited all his friends to a good dinner. All the friends, they came in such short notice. They were all wondering why he is calling us all for dinner. They were anxious to know. Anyway, they enjoyed the food. So when they inquired what was the matter for rejoicing, the man told them what had happened. He met with accident. The car was smashed. So he is having the party. The friends were astonished. They began to ask him, you have lost your car and you are celebrating? The man replied, yes, but do not get me wrong. It was a nasty accident. My car was smashed to pieces, but I was saved unharmed. I am rejoicing at that. Don't you see that I still am here? Only my vehicle is lost. This episode appears to be ridiculous. You think this man is rather queer. You may even laugh at his behavior, but then you miss the message he is trying to convey to you. Examine what people are doing all over the world. Everyone is saving one's vehicle at the cost of one's self. Is it not preposterous? What is the vehicle here meant? Your body, mind, intellect is your vehicle. Atman is your self. You are worried all the time about your vehicle. You are never concerned with yourself. You care more for your vehicle than yourself. You have lost yourself and preserved your body, mind, intellect. What a colossal blunder. And yet you are not aware of it. Yet you are not coming to senses, much less concerned. It's a great wonder that you have forgotten your Godhead. It's a strange oblivion that makes you forget your own self. You must now reverse the process. Do not pamper your body, mind, intellect anymore. Lay the accent on yourself. Assert yourself. Be yourself. You are God already. The next point. These are all wonderful concepts to meditate upon. Finite and infinite. We need to understand it more clearly. this concept. Vedanta proves to you that the finite itself is infinite. Finite is infinite. It looks absurd. But when you study the finite closely, you find it to be true. Infinite is infinite. Let us consider the finite entities one by one: mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. Let us examine them. Let us analyze their nature. Then we will arrive at the same conclusion. Mineral kingdom, for example, it is matter. Matter is made up of atoms. An atom is so minute, yet it contains enormous power. You know how the atom bomb made such a colossal power. Imagine the power contained in the millions and billions of atoms packed in finite matter. So it is infinite. Let us consider the vegetable kingdom. Take a seed, sow it in thousands of trees again. They produce millions of seeds. Sow the millions of seeds, you get quadrillions, quintillions of seeds and trees. Just imagine all these spring from a single seed. Does this phenomenon end here? No, it does not. It goes on ad infinitum. There is no end to production of seeds and trees. Thus you see unending power of generating, the power of generating from one simple seed. A finite seed has therefore infinite potential, infinite potency, infinite power. Infinite is concealed in the finite. Infinite is concealed in the finite. The Vedantin has trained himself to perceive the infinite in the finite. To come to animal world, there too we see how the infinite is being betrayed in the finite. A cat, for example, produces a litter of kittens. The kittens grow up into cats. These cats in turn produce many more litters. Thus it goes on endlessly. Countless cats emanate from a single cat. The same principle holds good in the human species as well. You have the capacity to produce innumerable human beings. There is no end to your potentiality. Finite though you may be, you have infinite potency and power. There is infinity in the finite. This appears true with respect to your past and future. But what about your present capacity? You feel yourself to be a limited creature as regards your present state, but that is not so. Even with respect to your present state, you possess infinite capacity, infinite potency, infinite power. How is that? Let us carefully analyze it. Carefully analyze our daily activities. What have you been doing since you wake up this morning? Make a list of it. You woke up, read the newspaper, breakfasted, did all sorts of things, made a big list. Is that all? Have you not done anything beyond this? Perhaps more. You may list a score or more activities. After that you say, that's all, I have not done anything more than what I have enumerated. Now follow closely. You have actually done much, much more. You don't seem to be aware of them. You have executed innumerable activities which you do not mention, which you have not listed. How is that? Your eyes have been seeing many objects. Each time your eye sees an object, the muscles in your eyes are subjected to a series of subtle actions before the sight is registered. All these activities emanate from you. You are responsible for them. Again, your other sense organs, ears, nose, tongue and skin, have been extremely busy with their respective activities. They have gone through innumerable actions. All these activities are also yours. You have produced them. Similarly, your mind has entertained manifold feelings and emotions. You have produced each one of them. Your intellect has conceived numberless thoughts. You have produced them all. Again, consider your other activities like respiration and perspiration, eating and evacuating, digestion and distribution of food, etc. Countless cells in your body, hair on your skin, blood in your veins are all functioning through you. Is it not? At this very moment, you are producing infinite actions. Can you count them? Is it possible to count? Remember this. Realize this. What you call as infinite, what you call as finite is in truth infinite in nature. Vedanta wants you to recognize your innate power. You must develop truth in your own self. You are not a finite, limited, miserable creature as you think yourself to be. You are infinite. You are God Almighty. Nothing short of it. That's the truth. Now, hold that view at any cost. Don't compromise. Assert yourself. I am all. I am everything. The microcosm and macrocosm are in me. I am infinite. I am God. I am Brahman. So these are the bold truths declared by Vedanta. These are all to be developed. You must nourish these ideas. You must undergo systematic discipline and cultivate them. Make them your own. The first distinct sign of spiritual maturity is independence. As you advance spiritually, you become more independent of the world around you. Spiritually retarded, you become dependent upon your body and its perceptions, your mind and its emotions, your intellect and its thoughts for your happiness. Your happiness depends upon this. Observe other creatures. They are wholly dependent on the world. They have no spiritual potential at all. Hence they cannot attain happiness without the world. In their senses and mind, if their senses and mind are fed properly, they are happy. If not, they are unhappy. That means their happiness is derived from the world of objects and beings. But you belong to the highest species. That's why human birth is considered most fortunate. To be born as a human being is a very fortunate thing, Shankaracharya says. Your happiness need not depend on your perceptions, emotions and thoughts. You can gain self-sufficiency by attuning yourself to yourself. You can gain absolute happiness within yourself. You need not slavishly depend upon the world. You can gain perfect mastery over the world. Nothing in the world can affect you. You become independent of environment and circumstance. You are then truly spiritual. You may wonder as to how you can remain unaffected by the world. How can you ever be free from the persecutions of your body, mind and intellect? How can you keep a balance of mind in the midst of trials and tribulations of this world? How is it possible to overcome the influence of the world around you? These are all valid questions. The answer to these questions lies in the secret. What is that secret? Of separating yourself from its association with body, mind, intellect. You must know the technique. As long as you are attached to your body, mind, intellect, you are tossed and tossed by the world. Detach yourself from them. Be yourself. The world can never touch you. You will remain immaculate, uncontaminated by the world. To explain it through an analogy, when the coconut is raw, the green coconut, the kernel sticks to the shell. Kernel and shell are together. If you break the shell, the kernel also breaks. This is a common experience. But what happens when the coconut dries up in the tree itself? Let the coconut dry up completely. You will notice the kernel separating clear from the shell. Kernel is free. It shakes within the shell like a rattle. Break the shell of the dry coconut, the kernel remains as it is. Kernel does not break. It is unhurt, uninjured. The same is true of yourself. So long as you identify with your body, mind, intellect, you are affected. When your body, mind, intellect is affected. But when you detach yourself from them, you remain unaffected, unchanged, equanimous, notwithstanding any damage inflicted on them. You gain freedom, liberation, independence. That is the characteristic of a matured spiritual person. Another important point is that the love that people claim to possess is far from true love. It is preferential love, uneven love. A man loves his own children, kith and kin, because they cater more to his personal demands, physical, emotional, and intellectual. True love is universal, even, same to one and all. Love in its purest form can never be concentrated in one form. The more you develop such love, the more self-developed you are. Universality of love is one of the characteristics of individual perfection. To take an example, see the life of Lord Christ. His love was uniform. It was unabated in the worst of circumstances. When he was crucified, he maintained the same feeling. His love poured out to those who nailed him on the cross. He uttered the famous words, dripping with affection, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." That is the universal love. We should cherish that idea. Another point is objectivity. It is one of the most striking qualities of the spiritually evolved ones. Objectivity means maintaining an impersonal attitude in life. Being objective is opposite of being involved in the affairs of the world. Learn to look at the world objectively, as you would a picture on the wall. Be a witness, a sakshi, to all happenings in this world. Watch the procession of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts go by. Attune to yourself. Treat your body, mind, intellect as something other than you. The world of objects and beings affect your body, mind, intellect, but it can never touch your real self. Retire to your own self and look life with tongue in check. That is objectivity. That is spirituality. So we should develop our spiritual life in that fashion. Another positive characteristic of spirituality is cheerfulness. Cheer develops in a person commensurate with his spiritual awakening. Lord Krishna is a personification of this wonderful trait. Lord Krishna's entire life was infested with continual trials and tribulations. He had to face the greatest oppositions and challenges, yet he remained ever full of joy, full of fun and frolic. He was a picture of cheerfulness. As you evolve to higher perfection, you shed your laziness, indolence, you become brighter, more active, dynamic. So, detect your shortcomings, rectify them, thus unveil your real self. Self alone, thou art. The aphorisms declare that thou art God. Godhood is not something that you gain or lose. Godhood is your essential being at all times. If that be so, what exactly is the difference between your pre and post realization status? Before you realize God, you are God. After you realize God, you are God. Then what is the change brought about by realization? Very important point. Is there a change at all? Yes, there is one significant change. That is your awareness of Godhood. No doubt Godhood is your perennial being, but before realization, you are not aware of your Godhood, whereas after realization, you are aware of your Godhood. That's the difference. I will explain this through an analogy and then I conclude my talk. This story comes in Upanishad. Once there lived a king and queen. They were blessed with a baby boy. They were all very happy. But suddenly there was a flash flood. Terrible deluge. Nearly half the state was washed away by the floods. The baby prince was thoughtfully placed in a floating cradle. The king and queen were also drowned in the gushing forth of the water. It was a dreadful blow to the people of that state. Gradually the waters receded. The ministers took stock of the situation. They found the bodies of the king and queen, but no trace of the boy prince. Soon they launched a statewide search for the missing prince. A big black mole on the baby's left shoulder blade was their only clue. The search went on for several years. In the meantime, a resident took over the administration of the state. Anyway, the search was going on. In that very state, there was a beggar. For 14 years, the beggar was accustomed to beg for alms in the marketplace. All shop owners knew him. Some obliged him, some spurned him, some were indifferent towards him. Twice he was whisked away by the police and admitted in a beggar home. But then again he came out of the home and continued his begging. A third time, the police caught hold of him. The beggar pleaded desperately for his freedom, but the police were determined. This time they put him in a truck and drove him directly to the palace. The resident conferred with the ministers. They examined the beggar carefully. They found the big black mole on his left shoulder blade. They declared he was the missing prince. So they crowned him king. The entire state rejoiced. Now, The boy took time to realize the full implication of his sudden fortune. It was a year before he settled down and established himself as a lawful king of the state. Having done so, one day he disguised himself with his old beggar clothes and went to the market begging for alms. The shop owners were surprised to see him after a long lapse. Some obliged, some abused him, some were indifferent to him. Then he returned to the palace. Now carefully analyze the difference between the two experiences of begging, before and after he became the king of the state. In both experiences he faced variations, fluctuations, alternations of the outer world. In the first case he was affected by them. In the second case he was not. He stood well above them. He had nothing to do with them. External happenings could not touch the periphery of his personality. How did this change come about? Is it because the beggar became the king? No. That cannot be the reason. Because he was king before and after his discovery. He was actually the king even when he was begging in the first instance. So was he when he was begging in the second instance too. The only difference is that earlier he did not know that he was the king, while later he knew himself to be the king. It is a knowledge of his kingship that made him a totally different person. A similar phenomenon is your life. You are God. The kingdom of heaven is within you. You are not aware of your kingship at present. You know not you are God. So you suffer the alternations of life, fortune and misfortune, love and hatred, praise and censure, so on and so forth. Manifold variations and fluctuations of this world constantly trouble you. But the moment you realize yourself, you know that you are God Almighty. None of these external changes affect you. You remain ever calm and composed, reveling in your own self. That is the difference. Therefore know thine own self, the self you are, that thou art. That is how the Vedanta declares the truth, Tattvamasi. No reason for you to worry at all anymore. Concentrate, focus your attention on your own true self, the self which activates your body, mind, intellect. Realize it and then enjoy the bliss. Thank you. Sahanau bhunakto sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamasto ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. May the Supreme Paramatman protect us all. May He nourish us all. May we work in harmony with great vigor. May our study be illuminating and fruitful. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.